Welcome to the next episode of the CAPB Podcast. We are honoured to have veteran royalty on the podcast tonight in Liz McConaghy, who served for 17 years in the RAF as a crewman on a Chinook and is a best-selling author, no less. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honour to be invited along. So yeah, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun.
You've done a number of podcasts, Liz. Your story's well documented. We are sorry for the shit show that our podcast is going to be. We're hoping that we do you justice, and really appreciate you giving the time up.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure.
So Liz, as I say, your story's well documented, but give us. You served for 17 years. You did more tours than anyone I've heard of in Afghanistan. But give us what was the highlight of your military career?
Oh, well, do you know what? Funny, although you might have, I've done more tours than anyone you've heard of. I probably haven't done more tours than most of the Chinook Force, because the Chinook Force were just all the time, everywhere. That's the problem with being a popular aircraft. You just get sent everywhere. In terms of the highlight of my career, I mean, there was very obvious days. For example, I flew a Chinook into my old school, and at school I'd been told that joining the Air Force was a big mistake, and that I'd never make anything in my life if I didn't go to university and get a degree. And I kind of kiboshed all that and joined up instead, and a couple of years later took an aircraft in, and suddenly they all wanted to look around the Chinook. That was a very definite high. But I think in terms of like spanning the career was MERT. You know, I talk about it a lot, about being, you know, it was the highs and the lows of my career, because I just think what we did collectively as a force, and it's very easy sometimes you're talking about MERT to focus on the bad, the negative, and, you know, the soldiers that didn't make it. But actually, when you look about the amount that we brought back that did make it because of us, and I think I'm only gathering that kind of concept now, with people messaging me going, you picked up me, or you picked up my mate, or we put my mate on the back of your aircraft and he survived. So, you know, I think I was guilty of focusing on the negative there until recently. But yeah, what a privilege to be part of that. You know, it really was an honour to be part of any soldier's last journey off the battlefield. And at one point in Afghanistan, it was the only place in the world where you could survive a non-survivable injury, which is just like a phenomenal statistic. And it really was down to the medics. You know, we can't really take credit for it as an aircrew. We just flew that machine in and out of the landing point. But the guys and girls in the back were incredible.
It's fascinating to hear it from that. So I was Med Corps, served in Afghanistan, and also served in the hospital in Afghanistan, as well as in previous tours. Now, MERT changed the whole perception of what was capable from a medical point of view. It changed what was capable, because obviously MERT wasn't the only air asset in Afghanistan. We had Dustoff, we had Pedro, but they just didn't have the capability of MERT. And it was almost like when the MERT was called, or when it came in, it was almost like, thank God. Even though there was still the journey to get the aircraft from wherever it was to the hospital, then for the patient into the hospital, then through the hospital, through surgery, back to UK. But it was almost like if you got them onto the aircraft, it was thank God.
Safe,
yeah.
And it's funny because the difference between us and Pedro and the Dustoff guys, I mean, the Americans are mental. I mean, they're the best boys in the world, but there'd be places where they would just get sent instantly, and they were more smash and grab jobs. Yeah. So they'd go in, grab the casualty and get out of there, but they couldn't do much, like you said, on the back of the aircraft, whereas we were like a mobile operating theatre. And it morphed in time, because I remember my first couple of deployments out there, and equally in Iraq, we would kind of just do Chinook with a bit of med kit down the back, a couple of first field dressings and a couple of briefing, and that'll be fine. And then as the campaign grew and it got more kinetic in Afghan, we just got more and more kit down the back. And honestly, there's a picture in the book, as I'm sure you might have seen, but when we had to change aircraft, you know, when the aircraft went US and all of that kit had to be moved to another aircraft, it was such a task, because it all had to go back in the same place. And there was a lot of it as well. But, you know, I've literally seen people come over the ramp who were already dead and be brought back to life at our feet. And that wouldn't have happened on the Dustoffs or the Pedros.
No way.
But they did have a place, because there was plenty of times where the theatre commanders would not let us go in because the HLS was too hot, which used to be so frustrating. Honestly, you cannot understand how, for us as aircrew, when we're there and we are happy to go in, we will take that risk. But for the theatre commander saying, no, I'm not risking a Chinook. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world. But I guess there's bigger parts to play, isn't there? There's the Hearts and Minds campaign of losing a Chinook, you know, the medical Chinook in the theatre. So that's probably why.
I think one of the things I can take, like from my personal point of view, I'd say I was 23 years in the Med Corps, and I commissioned, went to W1, I commissioned, and then when you're involved in training and med planning and stuff, was that when we were pulling out of Afghanistan, and that it was almost like the expectation is we've got MERT. MERT is a capability we haven't, and it was an in-theatre capability, but not a global capability. So if we deploy, we'll just take MERT. It was like, that's not how it works. We need to be better on the ground. It almost came as a, like a real luxury, but people just expected it. Like wherever we go, we'll have Mert. I'll just 9-liner, we'll get Mert in. It's like, it's not going to work, mate.
No, I know. And a lot of people, when they were doing Mali recently, a lot of the Chinook Force were out in Mali, and people were banding around that word MERT. And it was like, it was a theatre capability. It was very specifically for Afghan. And just the infrastructure it took to set up, but also the lessons that were learned. And I think that's what worries me now. Obviously, I've been out for 6 years now, but that corporate kind of knowledge that was growing and around MERT and those lessons that came back, a lot of that is now being diluted because those lessons are gone. There's not that many people in the Chinook Force now who served in Afghanistan, so even that knowledge is gone. So hopefully we'll never need it again, but if the shit hit the fan, they'll probably be calling us all up going, how do we do this again?
I think it's crazy because it's, as I say, my 2 eldest sons are serving. So my eldest son, Ethan, is in the REME. He's been in for 4 years. And Cameron is a Royal Welsh, and he's been in for a similar amount of time. He's been in for 4 years. And it's like, it isn't just that, like you've said about the Chinook Force. It's about a lot of people losing operational experience because you just don't have those. Whereas 10 years ago, if you were in a unit and you hadn't deployed, you were rare. Whereas now it's like you're holding on to the sergeants, the WO2 staff sergeants who have deployed, and there just isn't that operational experience to lean on.
Yeah,
that you had with.
I worked for a drone company whenever I first got out, and there was even talk back then. So this is like a couple of years ago, of using drones for MERT, and I think there is definitely a possibility of having like a golden hour box in the bottom of a drone, and that's actually not that far from happening. It'd be quite useful in theatre like Ukraine, where you send it with it, the morphine in it, maybe a defib or whatever, or just to get that to the guys on the ground. But in terms of putting a body in a drone and flying it off the battlefield, for starters, I just think it's going to take a long time before it gets signed off. But also, it's the hearts and minds thing of knowing the MERT was working. And I think, I get, again, so much feedback from people who said just knowing that we were there waiting to come and get them meant they felt safer going out the front gate of any fob. And I think, the days where the weather was bad and the MERT was down, or there was a serviceability issue and the MERT was down declared, all theatre operations stopped because it was that comfort blanket for the guys on the ground, knowing that we were coming, no matter what, we were going to come and get you. So yeah,
I think, I mean, it was an incredible asset. And I think when we reflect back in years and years to come, it was a game changer, an absolute game changer.
Yeah.
So Liz, you now work in the motivational speaking space, and your story is incredible, not only from your brilliant career, but also from the challenges you had coming out and getting through them. How did that transpire into motivational speaking in the corporate space? How does that even work?
It was a bit of a random journey, as most of us find ourselves in things. We're like, how did we actually get here? But the book came out in 2022, and at that point, I'd done one talk before that, and it was basically off the back of my Air Force career. I worked for a charity for a while, and somebody from the charity asked if I'd go and do a talk at the local aerodrome club. So I went and did that, and I had like a PowerPoint presentation. It had like 26 slides in it, and it was all about my amazing career. Now, bearing in mind at this point, I'd already had the overdose. I'd already written the book, but none of that was out in public knowledge. I did my talk, and it kind of just ended on, me leaving the Air Force and blah, blah, blah. And then as a throwaway comment afterward, I'd done my talk. I said, I've actually written a book and it's coming out this year. And they're like, oh, will you come back next year and do a talk again? So I then went back and did almost a carbon copy of the talk, but with an extra couple of slides at the end of the overdose and the subsequent recovery and the book. And the audience were like just dumbfounded. They were like, so this happened years ago, but you didn't mention this last year. And it was almost like I couldn't talk about the overdose until it was already out there in black and white, and people had already kind of read about it. And it felt like, there's nowhere to hide now. It's out there for the public. Yeah. So that was the first one I did. I didn't get paid for it or anything like that. And I did a couple more just charity ones, and people asking, can I come and talk to their mates and stuff like that. And much like many military people, we don't really value our story because many of us think, well, everyone else has done the same. And I've always been like that. There was 80, 100, 120 other crewmen who all did very similar things to me. So why am I special? But then I met a lady called Mandy Hickson. So a couple of people have messaged me and said, you need to meet Mandy Hickson. She's written a book and she does motivational speaking. And then she actually contacted me on social media, and it turned out she lived 25 minutes away. So we caught up for a brew, put two blondes in a room who'd been in the Air Force. And honestly, we did not shut up. For
Mandy was a fast jet pilot, wasn't she?
Yes. And and ironically, I usually banter fast jet pilots quite a lot on social media. There is a lot of to and fro banter with us and the fast jet wankers. But Mandy got that. Mandy was super fun with it all. And she's just like the epitome of a good girl in the forces. So we got on really well. And she basically sort of started to give me some pointers about motivational speaking and said, I really think you'd be very good at it. And she then threw me a couple of gigs my way that she couldn't do. And I still was kind of stabbing in the dark a little bit because you don't believe in yourself. I really suffer from imposter syndrome. I still do now, like a lack of belief in my own ability. But the more and more I did, I kind of thought maybe I could make a career of this. And again, Mandy every time I saw her, she just kept drop kicking me off a cliff and going, fly, you're not going to be able to test your wings unless you try and jump off and see what happens. So I then quit my full-time job, which was with the drone company, set up my own company, Chinook Crew Chick Limited. And that was it. And a lot of my talks initially came off the back of LinkedIn, people reading the book and wanting me to come and talk about the book. A lot of podcasts, people listen to podcasts and kind of just got in touch. And then after a couple of months, I registered with some speaking agents because quite a lot of speaking agents out there. There's a very military heavy one. There's just loads of civvy ones. And you register with them for free, and they will get you gigs and then they take a cut on top of your fee. So it's not like you're paying them anything. So it's quite nice, actually. And I've put a couple of military people who have come out recently in touch with them and their career in the same forums starting to take off as well. Because truth is, we don't really value our stories, but civilians love it. They hang off every word. And I think because my front page or the front page of the book is my opening slide, and people think I'm going to stand there and be like some kind of warrior princess who's going to talk about all this cool time in Afghan, dodging bullets, saving lives. And then there's a huge twist 3/4 of the way through. Yeah. People just don't see it coming. And the nicest feedback I think I ever had was a big tech conference, so like a room full of 800 IT geeks. And the girl at the back said every single person put their phone down. And I was like, well, that's good. That's a good kind of feedback, isn't it? So,
Liz, do you feel that your time in the military prepped you in, specifically in your job, prepped you for that, putting yourself out there? Because we as service personnel we're pretty shit at doing that. Like pretty shit, like you say, we're pretty shit about not bigging ourselves up, but explaining what we did, because we're just like, yeah, it's our job, which is like day to day. Did you find that when you started speaking, that your experience within the Air Force and the environments that you've been in had helped you get over that sort of, I mean, don't get me wrong, we get butterflies, but did it help you get over that? Did you draw from that at all?
Good question. And the answer is no. I hated public speaking when I was in the military. I remember having to give morning brief in the squadron. And like bearing in mind the rooms for like 20 of your mates, 30 of your mates. And the slides were like 5 slides, like aircraft serviceability, flying program, emergency of the day, and some other topics. And I used to absolutely brick it. Like I would not sleep the night before. I'd get into the squadron like 6 o'clock in the morning to check all the IT, and was still so anxious standing there briefing like this tiny amount in front of all my mates. And I think it was that fear again of someone asking you something that you didn't know the answer to. And I think the difference now is I know my story inside out. And in theory, there's nothing anyone could ask me that I won't know the answer to. So I think that helps when anyone's standing up in front of people. But I think the more you can believe in your own story and what you're doing, that's when kind of the confidence grows and the nerves go away. I mean, I look back again, how nervous I was standing in front of the squadron, but put me on a ramp in front of like 20 or 30 paras or Marines, I didn't care at all. I was more than happy because I was in my comfort space, and there was probably more banter coming from them than there ever would have been from the guys in the squadron. But I just felt more comfortable because it was my safe space. So I think, whatever you're going to go on and talk about as a veteran, if you're going to go into the speaking circuit, there's loads of stuff we can talk about. I do talk about communications, but the reality is I wasn't a signaller. I'm probably not the best person. I wasn't even a radio operator apart from on the back of the aircraft. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about that, although I do have the lessons I've learned and some decent, what I think is content to put out. But I'm never as confident giving that talk as I am giving my own story talk, because it's not my absolute comfort. So if anyone's going out there to tell their story in public and to do motivational speaking, just tell your story. Don't try and big it up. Don't play it down either. Just tell it and be authentic with it. And honestly, civilians will really love it. And I think as long as you can relate, there's so many lessons we learn in the military that actually civilians, if you relate it correctly to the audience, then they really get something from it. I mean, some of the key points I talk about is mission creep. I was really guilty of that. I mean, you don't do 10 Afghanistans, normal people don't do that. Normal people put their hands up and go, right, I've had enough now. But I just kept going because I didn't want to let the side down. I didn't want to be a burden because someone else would have had to go in my place. And I think civvies really relate to that when you say, how many people switch their laptop on a Sunday and you see a whole audience go, oh, I do. And that's mission creep and how to guard against mission creep. And it's such a simple thing for us, but civvies are like, oh, I do that as well. Debriefing, civvies don't debrief. And it's such a simple thing that we in the military do. Briefs and debriefs is part of the parcel, don't we? So there's loads of things, if you think about it, your military career, that you can pass on to a civvy that is your bread and butter, but they will just lap up. Yeah.
Liz, has there been, in your motivational speaking career, has there been a moment where like you're at a gig or you're at like, you've got a thing where you're going to do speak and you think, how the fuck did I get here? This is like something else. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's the company you were speaking for or the people you were sharing a stage with, there's been a moment, like a proper pinch me moment post your service.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few, really. I was at Bear Grylls Festival last year and Harry Bidder-McGar was on before me. And I was like, how the fuck am I on stage after Harry? Which was pretty mental. Again, that imposter things was one last year. I got booked by a big cybersecurity company in London to do a talk in January. And I got a standing ovation at the end of it. And I was like, okay, that's brilliant. That's really good. Sold out of books and whatnot. And they booked me back a second time in June. They were doing another kind of ladies' day event or something. So I went back in June and I'm still sat at the back of the room going, why am I here? Like, why do they want me to... And the only way to kind of level up imposter syndrome in your head, only because the speaker before me was actually talking about imposter syndrome, ironically, is to pull out the facts and factualize it. So I literally had to, in my head, go, you got a standing ovation last time. That is a fact. Tick. You have been booked a second time. That is a fact. Tick. And they, all those, they already know what you're going to talk about and they still booked you a second time. So I think, that's the only way I can kind of overcome that imposter syndrome. But last week for International Women's Day, I was in the House of Parliament talking in the House of Commons, sat on a stage with Mark Cavendish's wife. And that was a proper pinch me moment. I was like, again, what am I doing here? And I was still sat there trying not to swear and be too crewman-y, kind of be a lady.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit mental sometimes. And, I don't want to know what's coming next half the time because I'm really enjoying the journey and I don't really want to spoil it.
I think honestly, it is fascinating. I love watching veterans achieve when they leave. I really, really like it's a weird thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, as I say, I served 23 years. I've left. I feel I've always got a connection to the military because my dad was in, our dad was in, but he left before we were born. And then like our grandfather was in, he died in service, actually. He died on exercise Germany. So his name's on the Arboretum. That's weird, by the way. Going back to the National Memorial Arboretum with my granddad's name on there. Yeah. And also the people I served with. Yeah. And then the people also you've treated who didn't make it. It's a weird... I mean, the Arboretum's a fascinating place.
I think that's the one thing we didn't really get as the Chinook Force. Like, we saw all of the casualties, right? We saw all of those who paid the ultimate price down the back. I pretty much lost count of the amount of T4s we brought back who ultimately died in the aircraft. But because we didn't personalize them at the time, I don't stand at the Arboretum and go, I know that name, I know that name, I know that name. But the truth is, if I put more detail in my logbook at the time, I would go, oh, we picked him up, we picked him up, we picked him up. And so there's almost this weird, like, unattachment to the names, but it's the overall loss that I really struggled with when I left. I think it was that overall, like, just the constant thread of bodies. And then again, fast forward to 2021 when we pulled out of Afghanistan, whenever Afghan basically crumbled and went back to the Taliban. Like, I know that hit so many people really, really hard because it's, again, we saw that collective loss as a Chinook Force. You think, what was it for? And then for someone who's lost someone personally, my God, how do you get your head around that? But I think I really had to focus on the positives and what we did achieve. And I think you can just spiral into a hole again. And I'd already gone through the hole a year before that. So I had to make sure I stayed level just by focusing on what we did achieve. And we actually did some pretty incredible stuff. We got kids out in the streets flying their kites. We got girls in schools who probably have grown up now and have left the country and have got a degree. So, I just think that's really important and you've got to focus on that, not the loss.
100%. We had Johnny Ball on from the Afghan veterans, the Afghan veteran community, and he's fascinating. And I said to him, and Paul and I could both relate to it because, as I say, we both served Iraq, Afghanistan, done all of those things during the modern time. But when you watch the Remembrance Parade at the Cenotaph, the RAMC have an association.
Yeah.
I can't relate to the RMC association after 23 years service, because even though I look at it and when I see them, I can't really relate to them. I see there's a number of people on there, but when I saw, because you marched this year, I literally was like, I can relate to that. Those people, I can, and I've spoken about this before about remembrance. Remembrance is an incredible day. Early on in my career, it was an inconvenience, and
totally. I used to hate it
because it was like I couldn't relate to it. It was service dress on a weekend, and I know I'm not taking anything now. I've learned, but I joined at 16, so it was just an inconvenience, and there was no, I couldn't relate to it. Now, remembrance is really important. It's really important to me. It was really important, like in Iraq. As soon as you were connected to someone who had lost their life in service, it was like, shit, this is important. And when I watched you guys march at Cenotaph, that's what I said to Johnny when he was on the podcast. I said to him, I was like, Bagsy, 2 spots, man. 3 spots, because Wayne served in Afghan as well. I even went into the loft and found my shemag, and I was I still got it. I sent him a picture, and it's in my box of all my shit. And I was like, mate.
And Johnny was on that idea up, because I kind of knew about that whole idea before it sort of hit the public streets. Johnny and I were chatting about it, and Matt as well. Matt's been incredible. And they were kind of brainstorming ideas about it, and they'd mentioned the shemags, and I did the same. I was like, I've still got my shemag, and I've got a green one, the green patterned one. So I came home and found it in a bag, and honestly, as soon as I opened the bag, the smell of hydraulic, I was like, oh my God, that's going back in the bag. But it's such that shemag went everywhere with me. It was kind of ripped and shredded and whatnot, but I refused to get a new one. But exactly what you said about the relating thing, because, I could technically march with the 18th Squadron, the RAF Association, the Air Loadmasters Association, the MERT Club.
MERT Club, yeah.
I did my first year, I marched, but there's something about, and the MERT Club are great, don't get me wrong, but again, I find myself when I marched with the MERT Club in a very negative headspace and very negative kind of sad stories at the end of that down the pub, and add a couple of drinks in the mix, and it's not good. Whereas the Afghan community was totally different. I mean, as soon as we got to the pub, it was just no rank in the bar, and literally Patrick Saunders was there, and he was just a legend. It got, I think I tottered off home about 8 o'clock at night, having done a full 7 hours of drinking wine, and they stayed on and ended up in a nightclub somewhere. So, but it's that relatable thing, I went, and I think I knew 2 people before I went, and by the end of the night, I had 60 new friends, and it really did feel like that, because we were chatting about the fobs, we were chatting about just random, like the pogs that we used to have, pogs, we used to pay stuff with, and the shit laundry with the toggles, and all those funny little stories that you've forgotten from your Afghan days. We were just chatting away about them. So I've got an idea of making it I need to get a big charity on board to do it, but making a Op Herrick Monopoly board, because I think that would be hilarious.
I've got a contact who will help you with that, genuinely. So his name's Mark Stevens. I work with him now, actually, but he's 35 years in the Royal Marines. He was involved in creating the Royal Marines Monopoly board.
Oh, I didn't even know there was one of them.
Yeah, there is one. Yeah, there's one. He's still got 3. He's still got, don't say Royal Engineers, mate. No, literally no one has bought that Monopoly board, mate.
I've got it in the house.
Have you? We can make a more inclusive one with an Op Herrick one where everyone can play.
Yeah,
we can have a little Winnick, and we can have a Chinook and an Apache as the little thing.
It'd be cool, man.
Yeah, you forgot your Dayglow belt. So
go back for you.
Yeah, do not take any pogs or whatever. But I just think it'd be quite funny. But again, very limited market, isn't there? But instead of buying hotels, you buy Hesco Bastion.
Yeah. I'm looking.
Oh, yeah. Don't get on Hesco.
And the way in Monopoly, you've got the shit kind of properties that you buy, like Whitehall Road or something like that, or Old Kent Road, the brown ones that are really shit, like Park Lane. Yeah. Like there were certain fobs that you just did not want to go to, like Inkerman. And they could all be the crap ones, and then you've got some of the nice shiny ones, like Fob Edinburgh. Wasn't so bad, I don't think.
I think you would sell. I think you could if you were to make 5,000 boards, you could sell 5,000 boards.
It'd be good. Easy. I like your proceeds to charity or something, but yeah, I think it's important. I do think it's important to capture that before we forget it all. Right. And I think that was the other thing about writing the book. I didn't think I would be able to remember a lot of stuff. And as soon as I started to write and you exercise that muscle, I would write one story, and then I'd be like, in the middle of the night, wake up and go, I forgot about that bit in there. And you'd fill in the gaps a little bit. And the more you start to regenerate your memory, the more it comes back, which has its bonuses, and obviously there's times where people do just want to forget stuff. But I think it is quite important if the memory's there and it's stuck somewhere hidden, just to pull it out and talk about it. So that's really helpful.
It brings me on to my next thing I was going to say, which is, did you journal at all? Because you are, make no mistake, book aside, a skilled wordsmith. I've seen some of your poetry. You write beautifully, and it's it's really creative. Now, you wrote a book. You said you had to journal as part of your role as air crewman, but did you journal fucking hell, that was a shit day?
I never journaled at all. And our
Really?
journal that I had was just a logbook. So you put the aircraft serial number, the pilot of the aircraft, and what your tasking was and your hours in. So I didn't, even in op-eric, I just put op-eric tasking, IRT shout, op-eric tasking. So I never really filled in enough info in there. But I didn't journal at all. And I didn't read. And this is the best bit. I did English lit at school. Only to GCSE level, and then I dropped at fry level on everyone's advice. When everyone tells you what you should do, I listened to them whenever I was 15 or whatever it was. Instead of doing because I really loved English literature, and then dropped it. And I just really wish, and that's always my advice to kids when I do school groups, is do what you're really passionate about, because it's better to have 3 good A levels and pass them in subjects that you love than to do 3 subjects that you don't really love, you don't really commit to, and you fail everything like I did. Not that I really needed them going forward, but it still would have been nice to have had them. But no, I didn't do anything like English literature, didn't do any reading. I'm crap at reading. I was always down the gym instead. It was reading was wasted effort, really wasted time of day.
Wasted time.
Yeah. And then I said the book just sprang out of me in 3 weeks. I wrote it so quickly, and it was just a big brain dump on the computer. And that was what was so weird, because then whenever I didn't even intend anyone to ever publish it, and it was my mate who said, look, I think you should send it off and see what happens. So it was a complete fluke when it did get published. And then when it sold out before the release date on pre-orders, and I remember thinking, well, that's all my mates, and my mum's probably bought about 500 copies, and a couple of mates have bought copies. Oh, that's good. And then it came out, and 2 weeks later it sold out again. And I was like, and then the reviews started to come in on Amazon and stuff.
There's over 600 reviews on Amazon.
Yeah. And they're all really good.
If they're brilliant, they are I buy a lot of books, right? A lot of books, and don't read all of them, right? There's a few books I pick up and I read all the review. The recent one, The Hardest Geezer book, The Bloke Who Ran the Length of Africa, I literally couldn't put it down.
Oh, really?
I literally couldn't put it, because his story's fascinating. Yours is another one. It's what I like about it is you can read it, as in you can read it and go, it's not something that you think, this is going to take me 2 months to read this.
It's not War and Peace, is it?
It's
War and Peace. Well, it's a bit about war.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah. But I love that. I think
maybe that's why I didn't overthink it, because I never intended anyone to read it. So it literally is written like I'm talking to someone in the co-op queue, and it's very not PC as well. I mean, I do slag off the angry lesbians quite a bit, and they don't seem to have been that offended by it. They're still all my friends. So but yeah, I think because it didn't get heavily edited, it is just me chatting, and maybe that's why it's done so well. But I also think it's the mental health thing's huge. Again, coming back to, it's the one thing connects us all. It doesn't matter how old you are, what country you come from, what language you speak, or if you were serving or not serving. That mental health bit at the end seems to be the bit most people connect with, and that's the bit I always get really nice feedback about. So.
It's ace, and I'm going to connect it to something you've just said, which is you didn't have time to read because you're always in the gym. Now, Paul and I love running. We are, I would say we are average runners, okay, but we run a lot. So, for an example, just to the type of character that Paul is, on the Thursday, Paul was diagnosed with bowel cancer. No, this is Jen. I don't often chuck Paul up. He's my younger brother.
I'm going to dine out on this now.
Yeah, you can dine out on it. But on the Thursday, Thursday evening, Paul was diagnosed with bowel cancer. He told me, told family, and we were in bits, because Paul was 39, blah, blah. Anyway, on the Saturday, Paul ran an ultra marathon, right? That he was booked in for anyway. I was like, you're going to have to defer your place on the ultra. He was like, are you mad? I was like,
yeah, hold my beer.
Literally. And I remember I was like, well, I'm with you, mate. So it was a 24-hour ultra marathon. I was here. He was doing it in North Wales, down Offa's Dyke Path.
Oh, so nice and flat then.
Yeah, hideous. And I'm like, are you all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine, mate. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, what about now? Mate, I've seen, your marker stopped. I don't know why I'm doing this. My phone doesn't even look like this. But it was like, how are you getting on? But mate, where are you now? And literally worried sick about it. And he just did like a 50-mile ultra. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, so we run now. I run more now than when I was in.
Yeah.
Because what happened to me when I left the military, I was like, great. I was always fit. I played football for the army, played football for the masters, and it was like always fit. I left the army and ended up doing like 5-a-side once a week. And within about 8 months, fat.
Yeah.
I was like, when the fuck did that happen? Right? So I was like, I need to do something about this. And I'm not intrinsically motivated. So I can't just go, I need to train because that's what I need to do. So what Paul and I ended up doing is we talked about it and we just book 6 or 7 events throughout the year.
Get
10K, an ultra, half marathon, London Marathon, book these events just to hold yourself accountable to go, well, I don't embarrass myself and to keep focused. And it's crazy, like for me, how much, if I don't run for 3 or 4 days, how like I can't think straight. It's weird. It's like a real focus thing.
Well, you know, and by the way, Paul, that is insane. Well done. And the fact that you both do ultramarathons. Now, I've never done an ultramarathon. I've done Ironmans, but never an ultramarathon. So that's next on the bucket list. So maybe we should do a CAPB one. We should do one together.
100%.
But I'm raising money for bone cancer. But it's funny you saying that because I, as you know, it's well documented in the book that when I lost running as a coping mechanism during lockdown, that's when life absolutely fell apart. And I don't think I'd realised how addicted I'd become to running. And I thought, you know, like all of us, when you miss a day training, you get like a grumpy bear. Oh, she's at the gym today, she's grumpy. But the truth was I was so addicted to it because it was keeping me on like the level playing field that I was like unhealthily addicted. Like I was literally running my body into the ground and breaking bones and all sorts of stuff. And it's all through my kind of PTSD recovery for the last 4 years. I've never really got back to it with any kind of dedication or commitment. And it was only last year when I got a place for the London Landmarks in April last year. And I was like, oh shit, I've actually got a place now and I'm getting sponsored. So I really have to do it. So I did it. And oh my God, it was like such a hard 13 miler. And I used to do the Great North Run every year. I used to run like 50 miles a week. And I was wheezing my way around this like bright beetroot red to the end of it. Freaking hated every mile for the last 4 or 5 miles, which is quite a big chunk to hit in a half marathon.
Yeah.
And then, but I did get the running bug back, and then Combat Stress gave me a place for the London Marathon, which is in like, well, I keep getting that annoying email saying it's only 45 days now. But I've got a place here, and I think Combat Stress knew that they probably had so many places to give out, and I think when they probably were swamped with people asking for them, but I think Combat Stress are a great charity, and they kind of knew how much it meant to me to get a place, so they paired me up with one of their slots, and now I'm back running, like, you know, I'm up to 20 miles at the minute. So
that's amazing. Have you run the London Marathon before?
No, I'm popping my cherry this year.
My God, I've run it once. I ran it for a veterans charity around for Blind Veterans UK in 2023. And I mean, for me, I mean, I love the whole experience, but I run to music, right? I always run to music. Some people just like to raw dog it, no music. But I was like, I love music. It motivates me. So I'm
naked running, apparently. And I put a post out, I said, I've just done some naked running. I'll put my clothes back on now. And I was like, that's not naked running.
No, that's not it. So I put the headphones on. And in 2023, the start line was pissing down, like absolutely pissing down. So I was like, it's okay. It's good. Can't wait to get going. Really nervous than training. Literally, so it was like, as it was setting off, I wanted my headphones to last. So I was like, right, great. Turn my headphones on, music starting. I'm like, here we go. Literally 100 meters in, my headphones just like, nah, they just died with it. And I was like, I honestly, Liz, it was that I couldn't regulate my breathing. I literally was like, I can't even remember how to run. This is hideous. Well, and then it was I
don't know what to do because I always listen to music when I run. But on the day, there's so much atmosphere in the crowd. I'm like, so any advice is welcome, by the way, from either of you about how to get around in London Marathon.
So, well, this is what happened. So I was like, really getting stressed about it, like proper. And I actually just give myself a minute and go, fucking, this is a London Marathon. And then you get going. Then because I wasn't listening to music, you get to take it all in. And it is like another level, like London Bridge, Cutty Sark, all the things I've watched it every year. Do you know what I mean? On telly, I'm like, you know, I'm running around London Marathon. It is fascinating. How they organise it so well with that many people is crazy. Like,
and I keep having anxiety, like dreams about it. Like, what if I forget my trainers? And what if my watch breaks before I get there? Like, really stupid stuff. What if it never happened before, but it might happen now.
What if it doesn't end up on Strava? It never happened.
If it's not on Strava, sorry, Liz, it just didn't happen.
So I don't ever use Strava, and I do a lot of cycling as well, and I've never used Strava, and all of my mates are like, Liz, you should be on Strava, this, that, and the other, because I used to be quite a good cyclist as well. And I have got this theory that actually, because when you're using Strava, you get so competitive with your mates or just against yourself. And comparison is the thief of joy, right?
100%.
I now go out, certainly whenever I got into cycling again after lockdown, I'd go out and like stop at a bridge and take pictures of ducks, and then stop somewhere else and take a picture of something. And I'm so much better now at just enjoying it instead of just constantly trying. And before COVID, like I was smashing some PBs and I was constantly driving and trying to kind of get faster and again run myself into the ground. Whereas now I'm like, just go and enjoy it.
Well, this is I'll tell you what, it's like a secret that people don't know, right? And you heard it here like first, is that marathons are really, really hard. They take a lot of your time to train for. They're very, very hard. Ultra marathons are great. You can eat loads of food all of the time. You can walk. No one cares. It's like you can tab up hills. You can jog down. And
there'll be no walking.
Power hike.
Oh yeah. But I did an ultra marathon a couple of weeks ago, and it was from Brecon to Cardiff. And it was 44 miles, 70 kilometers. And it was like, this is ace.
You guys just like to pick the really hard ones. Mine is like really flat, like Lincolnshire ultramarathon.
All downhill, the whole thing.
I've relatively flat one in a couple of weeks. It's just outside Manchester. And it's a 5K loop for 8 hours.
Oh my God. But again, that's mental tenacity, and I genuinely believe your brain is the strongest muscle in your body. You can train your body to be like elite athlete, but actually, if your brain's broken, if you just got that give up moment and your brain gives up on you, you're fucked. So I really think that. I mean, the first Ironman I ever did, I trained my tits off for it, and then on the day the weather was so shit, like horrendously bad. And I remember coming into T2 off the bike and I couldn't even get my helmet off because you're not allowed to, anyone can help you. And I've got a cold weather injury, so I couldn't even feel my fingers. And I was trying to get my helmet off like this. And I remember sitting there just thinking, I'm done. I can't do it. I've done a year's worth of training and I'm done. And then going, you don't fucking run in your hands, get out that tent and start running. And it was just that moment of like, just go and get on with it. And it's a mental tenacity. And I think that's where ultras again, and I love listening to ultra marathon runners tell their stories on podcasts and stuff, because just that digging, and a couple of them have trained deliberately in places like running tracks where it's so just bland that you've got nothing but your own thoughts. And I think I've done a lot of my training for the marathon on a treadmill, and the treadmill at my gym where I do it, it's got a grey wall in front of it, no TV, and I've just been staring at a grey wall for 20 miles and going, well, if I can do this, everything else is easy. So
honestly, it's like Fizz. I can't recommend, like, if you like, Paul is fitter out of the army than he ever was in the army, and he'll admit that. And it's like Fizz is so important. Just do something, and that's what I say. Like, just do something.
We like to hurt ourselves. Veterans have this weird thing where, again, it comes back to that useful time, doesn't it? We feel like if we're hurting ourselves or achieving, and that's why you see so many veterans doing some really wacky challenges for a lot of the forces charities, because it's also more than that. I think whenever we put the uniform on, and most of us when we join up, let's be honest, not a lot of us do it for the money or the lifestyle. We do it because there's something in us that is the seed to serve. And I talk about this a lot, is that seed inside you that wants to make a difference, have purpose. And when you take the uniform off, that doesn't go away. And that's why so many ex-military people, I think, either work with charities or, volunteer with charities, fundraise for charities, all that kind of stuff, or go into like a lot of the blue services, blue light services, because that seed to serve doesn't go away. You can't quash it. It's just always there, I think, for us.
Mark said to us, Mark Ormrod, when he was on the podcast, he spoke about the Invictus Games, and he said that, like, the Invictus Games and how amazing that is. We've got a close friend, actually, a friend of the pod, who's just competed at the Invictus Games in Whistler and Vancouver, is that opportunity to represent, that opportunity to represent, to wear the flag, to represent your country again is something else. And I think, that links to like what you're saying. We just have this in us, that desire to serve, that desire to put ourselves forward.
And I feel like the Invictus Games, I mean, I hardly heard anything about it this year. I feel like it was completely overshadowed by Megan Gate. And it really annoys me that it steals the narrative from those guys and girls who are out there making, absolute history for themselves and for the country. And it really, I think it got overshadowed a bit this year. There's hardly anything on TV about it. And, I guess it's timing, isn't it? There's lots of other stuff going on around the world.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have the little good news story at the end. And it feels like actually there's never a good news story at the end of the news at the minute. So I'm trying. That's my other tip for a lot of veterans when they're struggling, is I used to get sucked in on the news constantly. And especially during COVID, it was like watching Kill TV. And it's so negative when you're pumping all that stuff in your eyeballs, and you're not
100%.
happy unicorn skipping along the screen. So I now try to not watch the 10 o'clock news, because if you're putting all that stuff in your brain just before you go to bed, I don't think it's good for any of us, really.
Definitely not. Plus, if you do, you're going to miss Love Island or whatever. And I love Love Island. You know what I mean? It's like
Married at first sight or something like that.
100%. Like first dates, man. It's like, I'm all in. Again, it's like a guilty pleasure. I'm all in for utter shit, Telly.
True. Honestly, I'd rather iron me eyelids than watch Love Island. Honestly.
Well, take a good book to bed. Take me to bed. Take Chinook Crew Chick to bed with you instead, and just read her. No. I always joke, you can make me naked. You can take the cover off, and I'm naked in bed. So naked in bed. But I've just stopped watching kind of the doom and gloom on TV. And
I mean, it's miserable. And don't get me started on politics, man. The whole world is in shit state.
Well, there's been a series that's been on recently. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. Called is it RAF Top Guns or something? And it's like the RAF have completely forgotten that they have a Chinook force and any helicopters. All they ever focus on is the fast jet wankers, and it really annoys me because we were always like the poor cousins of the Air Force. We worked for the Army and we were owned by JHC. So the RAF never really invested in a lot of military base, like the helicopter bases down south, because they were owned by JHC. So it's JHC funding. So you'd go to like a fast jet base somewhere up north, and they'd have the swankiest gyms, they'd have really lovely messes, all this cool stuff. And like, we were literally having rats in the officers' mess, rats in the seniors' mess. Like, the gym was falling apart, and it was just awful. And then every time you put the BBC News on, it was the Army Chinooks are deploying, and it's like, we're bloody RAF. So it really annoys me that those programs come on. It's all about the fast jet boys, because I think it's a misrepresentation for a lot of it. I still go home now and people ask me from school, how's the Army, Liz? I wasn't in the Army. I was in the RAF.
You didn't wear that blue stuff. You wore like the DPM. Huh? I don't get it.
I will correct you there, Matt. I never wore blue stuff.
I
think maybe twice in my career, probably I graduated.
There is photographic evidence that you did at some point.
There's a picture of the king giving me my Afghan medal and my blues. But I was like a cat above water, trying to put blues on. I just did not. Marching around in a skirt is not a good look, really, for any of us.
Liz, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I guess time is coming on. We could chat to you all night. We really, really could. Guess to close off the pod, what's next for you? What's the next thing that you're going to throw yourself into?
So I think I said before we started recording, people always ask that, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the truth is, I didn't even see myself here in 5 years. I mean, 5 years, it was nearly COVID, wasn't it? So it was just starting. And so much has happened in that 5 years, literally got to a complete breaking point and then climbed out the other side. But I think I almost don't want to know what's happening next, because it's just a big adventure. There's like things bubbling away in the background. I will write another book at some point. I've just been booked to go on some cruises this year, so I'm going on my first ever cruise. I'll have to pack my Blue Rinse Brigade hair dye and go on a cruise, but I'm getting paid to go on a cruise and do a couple of talks on a cruise ship, which is pretty cool, and I've got a couple of them this year, so that's different as well. That's different to doing school groups and doing a lot of the corporate stuff, so it just keeps growing in that direction. And then there is a guy in America, a great guy, Don Maxwell, who's on Twitter, and he read my book a couple of years ago when it first came out, and then asked if he could write the movie script of it. So he's written the movie script, and it's there. So if Tom Cruise is watching your podcast and he wants to make a movie, it's ready to go, Tom, and you can call it Top Gunner. But
you can't call it that.
No, I will not be calling
that. That would be how mad would that? Okay, quick one. Who would play you?
Liz would play me.
Oh, and by the way, it would have to be called Gloria Stitz, the movie, if it was going to be called anything.
Okay.
But what the girl from Killing Eve, because she can do a banging accent, and there's nothing worse than someone doing a bad Northern Irish accent. So yeah, it'd have to be someone who can do a good Northern Irish accent. But it might never come to anything. The movie industry is really struggling at the minute. But I think I'd much rather be on a big red carpet naming lights than another series of Our Girl or something.
I can't watch Our Girl.
Bad berries. Everyone's got their bad berries on.
I can't watch it. That. It's my cat badge, man. I can't do it.
Love Island. Put a Love Island on it.
Yes, put Love Island on detox.
Yeah, and hopefully the poetry is going to get published this year as well, because I've written so much of it, and I just publish it online. And I think, not many people really buy poetry books these days, because if you want to look up a poem for a wedding or something, or a funeral, you just look it up online, don't you? But I've sort of said to Combat Stress about maybe publishing it with them, in conjunction with them, and then all the profits could go good to them, because you don't make a lot of money out of books either, sadly. So whatever money did come out of it, it'd be nice that they got the money, the poems get published, and then also have some guest poetry in there as well, because I know a lot of the guys that go through the Combat Stress system all do a lot of poetry as kind of that kind of rehab therapy. And that's the thing, like, just getting everything in there out in whatever form: art, poetry, gaming. There's a lot of people do gaming now for PTSD therapy, and I just think it doesn't really matter what the outlet is, as long as it's coming out. It's the important bit.
Liz, thank you so much. I cannot wait to share this episode with everybody, and we wish you all the best. When the movie does come out,
do you want to roll?
If we could just, if we could just, like, I'll be like, fireman lifting stretcher off. I'll be whatever you want.
Give me one
if we could be on the movie.
One of the troops down the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Remph and Ponchettos.
That'd be Remph and Pizza Hut. Paul.
Yeah. Consider yourselves both in if it ever does get made.
Thank you so much, and all the best, Liz. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys. Listen, take it easy. Enjoy your running.